Today on Locked On Red Wings, we begin our 2024 player previews with Dylan Larkin, Christian Fischer, and Justin Holl.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fischer and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for the daily JAWWJ News Radio podcast. Scotty is the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. Sorry about that. Scotty, happy Monday. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Excited to start these player previews because, you know, on the internal timeline we have here at Locked On Red Wings for the off season, when we begin player previews, that means we are one step away from training camp, which means we are one step away from preseason, which means we are another step away. It's like the first real stepping stone into kind of ushering in the 2024 season.
Right.
Like, I know technically the league year begins with free agency and the draft, but like internally, it doesn't feel like we really turn the page on the season until we begin the player previews. And I'm excited to get started today because, one, we're starting with Dylan Larkin. We'll also cover Christian Fischer and Justin Holl in this episode as well. Talk about one big name and then a couple other guys that maybe won't take as much time to talk about as the captain Dylan Larkin. But with
new additions still.
Yeah, new additions. But without further ado, let's talk about the captain Dylan Larkin. Scotty set a career high in points, 79 points in 80 games played. Tying his career high in goals with 32 and tying his career high in assists for 47, which then combined for the career high in points. Last offseason, we asked of Dylan Larkin to have a career year, to become a point per game player. And while, yes, technically 79 points in 80 games is not point per game for all intents and purposes, it is. It isn't a point per game player. I mean, I guess the question here is one, what are we asking of Dylan Larkin this year? And can he even, at 27 years old, which happy birthday, by the way, as of recording this on Sunday, it is his 27th birthday. Can he take another step forward, or is Dylan Larkin what Dylan Larkin is?
You know, I think there's certainly when trying to do these previews and whatnot, like you only have what like you have. we only have what we've seen from him, right? And so up to this point, like I think there's a very winnable argument that like this is around the ceiling. You're gonna get, you know, like maybe the best version of Dylan Larkin is gonna be a low or mid 80s point total if he plays all 82 games, and certainly nothing wrong with that. That's a point per game player, and it's so funny, you know, we talk, you know, all off season we kept clamoring for getting a goal scorer, and like this team doesn't have a pure goal scorer and whatnot. And Larkin is not a pure goal scorer, but like that's still a guy that's had, you know, up and through his age 26 season has had 3 30-goal seasons. Like it's not like he's a slouch, you know what I mean? Like it's not like he can't put the puck in the back of the net. So it's I think for me it's one of those things where I am just absolutely fascinated with what he can do with DeBrincat next to him. I think that's like the next big question. Like, can DeBrincat take not only this team, like, you know, help take this team to the next level, but take Dylan Larkin to the next level? I mean, there's a legitimate argument that this is the best goal scorer that's ever shared a line with Dylan Larkin in his entire NHL career.
I don't even think it's an argument. I think that's just fact.
Right. And so, like, when you're talking about a playmaking center, giving him, in still very much his prime years, the best goal scorer he's ever lined up next to, you know, on a consistent basis, I think it is, I don't know if expect is the right word, but it's definitely in the back of your mind, like, hey, like, this is a point per game player at, like, base level. This is a point per game player with, I mean, if you look at the line, especially when Bert was hurt last year, I mean, like Raymond didn't take the step forward we needed. There was kind of a somewhat of a revolving door over there on the other side. Like, I don't know. I'm rather excited about what Dylan Larkin could reach, and not that it's my expectation, not that I like he has to get up to 90 points or whatever for it to be a successful season. If he's a point per game player, for the most part, I'm pretty happy. But there is something in the back of my mind that's like, I don't know, there might be like another level, even 5-10 points higher, just because of the roster that is forming around him now.
Yeah, I mean, and you got to think about it too. He got 79 points in 80 games while also battling through injury for part of the season. There was part of the season where he wasn't even playing center because he couldn't take faceoffs because his wrist was hurt so bad. He was playing wing on his own line because his hand hurt, and yet he was still scoring goals and getting assists. Dylan Larkin, well, yeah, his point totals took a step forward, and I agree with you and everything you said. I don't think he's going to ever be. I think, I want to be careful how I say this because I think he could surprise us, and I think he could get 40 goals, especially when you talk about the improvements made on his first line. But with Dylan Larkin, I don't think that's the goal. I think with Dylan Larkin, the goal is to have the entire roster revolve around him. Right. Like he has taken a step forward in every facet of the game this last year. In the locker room, on the ice, like he has truly become the leader the Detroit Red Wings needed, and his production on the ice, lends itself to a true number one center. Yeah, 79 points isn't like elite, but it's really damn good, and that's hard to find in the NHL. And I think with, like you were saying, with the additions on his wing, because DeBrincat is the best player he's ever had on his wing. If he stays with Lucas Raymond on his other wing or whoever, I think you're going to see more production from Dylan Larkin. It might not come necessarily from goals, but he may break his career high in assists. So you might see a 90-point season from Dylan Larkin because he is going to feed into his teammates like they are going to feed into him. Like that synergy is so important for player success. And Dylan Larkin has proven to be a fantastic playmaker as well. He makes the teammates around him better. And another underrated part of his game, Scotty, that Dylan Larkin has vastly improved on, and this is where I'm going to be really looking and scrutinizing, not so much his point totals and his offensive zone presence, because I don't know how much more there is for him to develop in the offensive zone. He's already a good playmaking and goal-scoring center. For me, it's the defensive zone stuff. This is the area where I want Dylan Larkin to continue to improve. But with that being said, I'm saying this because he has already vastly improved that aspect of his game. In 2021, 2022, he was a 27th percentile even strength defenseman. This last year, he skyrocketed all the way up to 73%. I'm sorry, 61%. So he has already vastly improved year over year, and that has been a thing that Yzerman and Lalonde have been hammering into Dylan. Even Jeff Blashill, when he was head coach, they wanted Larkin to improve defensively because what's even more important than having a number one center who can put up 100 points is having a number one center who can play both ends of the ice, and he has done that. This, I'll even pull it up just so people can see it. His JFresh card, and again, this isn't the end all be all for these things. And this was posted on Reddit, by the way. You can see it down at the bottom. I saw this and I was like, this is great. And I'm going to definitely bring this up when we talk about it. But his 3-year weighted average data, he was a 91 percentile WAR percentile center. So wins above replacement, he's top 10%, top 9% as a center in the league. He is, and you can see it, time on the ice, first line, like he is everything that the Red Wings need. Do I think he could improve on that? We'll have to see. But as it stands right now, I mean, I'm very happy with Dylan Larkin. And we talk about player previews like Scotty. For me, again, I just focus on that defense. If he can make that defensive even better, his defensive side of his game even better, then you're looking at just a stud number one center.
For sure. Well, and that somewhat translates into half of special teams as well. Like you see, I mean, according to this, like he's very effective on the power play. And I'm back to the offense really quickly. I'm really excited about what he can do on the power play now. Like with each of the last 2 seasons, the Red Wings power play has vastly improved from the previous year, just as far as personnel goes. Right. So like, I'm excited about the production that he can do there, but PK is like the one red square on this entire thing. And when you're talking about, being a defensive-minded forward, obviously that's not like 100% of it, but it's a lot of it, right? Like that's the whole point of the penalty kill. So I think that that's another unit of the special teams, and we'll talk about one of the acquisitions that was made kind of just centered around that period later. But like there is again like more additions and more personnel improvements on special teams as well. And I think that it's just one of those things where like we have seen Dylan Larkin give his like heart and soul to the Red Wings over the last 7 years now, 8 years now, and just like with really bad hockey teams. And like it's exciting that he's still young enough to where, right, like turning 27 today, like he's still young enough where, hey, like we're putting around like we are slowly putting some of the best talent, like the most talented roster he's ever been on. I mean, I guess his like rookie season, like there was still some hangover there, but like this is the most talent he's had on his roster at a minimum at a very long time. And so like it's just exciting right when he's reaching his peak as a player and he's entering his prime years. We are now giving him, as the 1C and the captain of this team, some of the most talent he's ever had as well. So just because of that, I think I again, not that I'm like holding my breath expecting him to take some massive leap forward again, but it wouldn't shock me if he set a new career high in points just and took another step forward in all those other areas we talked about as well, just because of the fact that he has more talent on his roster now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I completely agree. I think to put a nail in the Dylan Larkin part of the conversation, I'm lockstep with you. I think we could see more points out of Dylan Larkin, but I don't think that is our expectation of him at this point. I think as far as his offensive game it's developed. This is Dylan Larkin, and he'll get more points just because he's playing on a better roster. But I think if you're going to want him, for me at least personally, I won't put words in your mouth, but I don't think you'll disagree. Just another step forward defensively would be fantastic, sure. Because he's continued that upward trajectory. So that's when it comes to player previews for Dylan Larkin. That's where my expectation is at.
I'm with it.
Awesome. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to talk about Christian Fischer. Wow, my own last name, and I butchered it.
That's tough, dude.
Wow. Good, bad luck for me. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit that first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Yeah, I butchered my own last name so I could flawlessly skate on through that ad read. Flawlessly. Okay, that was great. 10 out of 10. I got to pat myself on the back. I didn't stumble at all in that read.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, that was great. I didn't try to ad lib, so that's usually where I get into trouble.
Usually your downfall.
So Scotty, let's talk about Christian Fischer now. This is a guy, and if anyone's wondering why we are balancing it this way, it's because Dylan Larkin's, there's a lot to talk about, and Christian Fischer is a fourth line guy. So that way, if there's any bleed over, we probably have a little, we can make it up with the Christian Fischer conversation. But that being said, Christian Fischer did play 80 games last year with the Arizona Coyotes. And I understand the Arizona Coyotes were and are one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League. So you would think that maybe him going to a better club, which again sounds really strange when you say that, because it feels like for the last 5 years, the Red Wings were not one of the better clubs in comparison, at least. But you think him going to a better club would indicate he'd be playing a lesser role with the Detroit Red Wings, but he is a PK specialist, and the Red Wings special teams is somewhere where they suffer. And you can't have a PK specialist just play on the PK. So I think my main question when previewing Christian Fischer, who had 27 points, 13 goals, 14 assists last year with the Arizona Coyotes, is will he play a prominent role with the Detroit Red Wings, at least in terms of bottom 6 minutes, to get him on that penalty kill where he can thrive?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't shock me. I do think that the fourth line, especially, but really the bottom six as a whole, I really just the fourth line. Like I when we did our lines projections, what was that, a couple of weeks ago now, probably. Um, I was pretty pleased with how our third line like shaped up, but that fourth line, I really think is just going to be a revolving door. I think that you're going to play matchups, or you're going to play like the hot hand. Obviously, I really think that anybody who's going into this season expecting the fourth line to look like even remotely the same from a night to night basis is really in for a treat. And I think you're going to see a lot of players down there. And I think Fischer is obviously going to be in the mix. I mean, he had, one of the best years of his career, and he's 26 years old. Like, it's not like this is, some like over the hill 35-year-old vet. Like, this is 13 and 14, like you said, 13 goals, 14 assists. But the penalty kill thing is obviously the biggest thing here, and I love it. Like, I really like this acquisition. I think that anybody who can, even if it is just like solely one aspect, anybody who is a specialist in one area, I am all for rostering. Like, I play matchups, dude. Like, use that to your advantage. Use the data and the stats and the analytics that we have at our disposal these days, and utilize the and put out the best product on the ice every night. And I think that Christian Fischer, while I don't expect him to be, lace up 82 times or anything this season, I do think that he's going to have a pretty decent role. And one of the biggest reasons why is because they want to be able to guarantee him a spot, even if it's PK2, like they want to guarantee him a spot on one of the penalty kill units. And if that means giving him fourth line winger units, I think that that's a very reasonable trade-off, again, for a guy that almost had a 15-15 season as well. Like, that's not like a slouch, down there at even strength on your fourth line either. So yeah, I fully expect him to be a decent part. It wouldn't surprise me if he was the 13th forward, a handful of times this season as well. But yeah, I do expect him to be kind of a fixture on that fourth line for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think with him, I agree with you. I don't think he gets 80 games, but I don't think he's going to be like your guaranteed 13th forward. I had to do the math in my head how many forwards
Right.
played in any given night. That's why there was a pause. I don't think there's a guarantee he's your 13th forward either. I think he's going to, every single practice, give Derek Lalonde a decision to make. Unless the Red Wings, and I know Derek Lalonde is big on, like, we're going to keep the same roster as long as the team's performing. But, like, if Christian Fischer has a really good practice and there's somebody on the outs, like, Fischer's going to get slotted in there. I mean, I could see him getting north of 40-plus games, the Red Wings. And, yeah, 27 points as a bottom six forward with the Arizona Coyotes. It ain't bad. I mean, him being a PK specialist is going to, be a giant boon to getting him in the roster more often. And I know that they have him listed as a right wing and a left wing, but I know he has played center as well. So I think he's going to be that guy that kind of gets dropped in, anywhere on the third or fourth line if there's a player that, isn't performing up to snuff, because what you're getting with Christian Fischer. He's 26 years old. You know what he is at this point. And I think that he is going to be serviceable in all those areas. I mean, yeah, his offensive, I'll pull it up here. The J Fresh card. And again, take these with a, they're great. I say this every time we bring up these cards because they're great. What's the word I'm looking for? Like supplemental help, but you shouldn't live by them. But they have him here as a 30% WAR player, 35 percentile on even strength offense, 33 percentile on even strength defense. But again, that's because he's a third and fourth line player. Like, you're not going to get a third and fourth line player who's going to have like a 95 percentile even strength offense, because then they wouldn't be a fourth line player. So, like, given what you expect of him, and you could see even, this is a 3-year weighted average. You can see he really bottomed out in 2021, 2022 and took a step forward in 2022, 2023, especially his defense. Like, he became a lot more defensively responsible this past year, becoming, above 50. Like, last year alone, he was above 50% at even strength defense. Like, there's something to be said about that. So I don't expect big things from Christian Fischer, but when talking about player preview, I think he's going to be a guy that every single practice is going to give Derek Lalonde something to think about on making the roster. And I think that the fact that he's so good on the penalty kill is going to really make it hard to keep him out of the lineup.
I agree, man. I mean, you put you said it wouldn't surprise you if he played like whatever you said, low or mid 40s games. It wouldn't shock me if this dude played 60 games. Like it's genuinely like I think that playing 2 of every 3 nights, like that's still, a night off a week. That's still not a guarantee in the lineup, but like it wouldn't shock me at all if this dude, laced him up 55, 60 times for the Wings. Like, and obviously like injuries are going to happen too. And then, you're one dude away from this dude being a permanent fixture on the 4th line. You know what I mean? Like I think he's going to be, I don't want to use the word staple because I think that the 4th line will be kind of a revolving door down there, but I think he's going to be a pretty prominent fixture down there. And as we've alluded to a million times already, the reason why is because he's going to bring you immense value on that penalty kill night in and night out. And that's, again, like I love specialty players like that. I love it. If you can excel at one thing and make a whole career out of that, you've got a spot on my team. I'll gladly use a roster spot on somebody who's going to help me vastly in one area, especially an area that the Red Wings have needed help on over the last 3 years.
Yeah, and he addresses a big team need in team defense, and also does exactly what Yzerman signs these types of guys to do: depth guys who are going to compete for a roster spot, so that he doesn't just give roster spots to young guys.
Right.
So, I mean, I like the signing a lot, but I would also not expect him to be like a huge game breaker for the Red Wings, because he's a nice depth piece for the Detroit Red Wings.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Justin Holl. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are going to move on to our final player in today's episode, the much criticized signing, I guess you could say. Controversial. That's a better word. Signing of Justin Holl. We've talked about him in his own episode, obviously, when we did the breaking down the new players episodes. But, Justin Holl, I think, is kind of, and we've said this on that episode, and we'll talk about it, but I think he's kind of, I think he's kind of unfairly criticized because of the way that the Toronto media market works. They always find one guy that they love and that they raise on a pedestal, and then they always have one guy that they kind of make the scapegoat. And in Toronto, it was Justin Holl. Now, to the credit of that argument, he was really bad in the playoffs, just like an absolute pylon cone. But in the regular season, he's actually a pretty solid defenseman, and he's not going to be playing, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, and you can call me out if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he was playing like top line level minutes in Toronto. He's not going to be doing that here. So when you talk about Justin Holl, who's starting year 1 of a 4-year contract, that's going to be paying him $3.4 million a year. He's 31 years old, so like still on the back end of his prime, and as his prime concludes, his contract will expire. I mean, this is a guy who I think is going to shore up. You get comments a lot about whether it's shore up the defensive side of the Red Wings game. And I think that he's going to be better than Red Wings fans expect. I don't think, and I'm not trying to make it out to be like he's going to be some amazing defenseman, but I think he's going to be a pretty good addition to an otherwise pretty crappy defensive core.
Yeah, so his regular season, again, I feel like we say this every time, but I really want to articulate plus minus is like not the greatest stat in the world, but this is like something where you're like, all right, like this, he had a plus 15 plus minus in 80 games in the regular season, right?
Yeah.
In the postseason, in 8 games, he had a -7.
Yeah, he was. Really
so
bad.
It's just like, you know what I mean? Like they definitely. The postseason, and like that, his other postseason appearances in his career, he's like in the positive for most of the other ones. So it's just interesting there for sure. Definitely not a great postseason, but I think the biggest thing for me, and the reason why I like do not have nearly as big with of an issue with this signing as a lot of people seem to have, was just like his role on the team. Like he's not. Like we didn't bring him in and he's not going to be playing like top pair. He's not going to be out there, like 24 minutes a night. Like I don't know. Like it's just one of those things where if he is a traffic cone out there and he's just an absolute liability, then like we'll talk about it. We'll talk about how that's, potentially two defensemen in back-to-back off seasons that have ended up being like pretty big liabilities on the blue line. But again, like bad postseason, not a horrific regular season like player. Like he wasn't a liability out there for Toronto the last 6 years, right? Like he wasn't. So and again, like not that he was the best defenseman in the world, but like we're not bringing him in to be that. Like he's gonna get bottom 4 minutes on the blue line, and I think that he's more than capable of doing that. And I don't know. I think that Holl's gonna be a guy that if everything goes right, most nights we're not going to talk about him in our game recaps. You know what I mean? Like he's not an offensive like defenseman. Like his career high in goals is like 3. Like he's not gonna produce a lot offensively. So on a night to night basis, if we're doing a game recap, if we're not talking about him, then like that's probably a successful night for Justin Holl.
Yeah, he's going to play second line or even third line minutes with the Detroit Red Wings. He is, for what it's worth, again, if you believe in this, great. If not, then, do with it what you will. But you see it here. He's a 71 percentile at even strength defense. His offense obviously took a huge dip down this past year, but his defense got even better at even strength. So if his offense can
52
recuperate
overall is better than half the league.
Yeah, and I mean,
like again, he's going to be like a fine, like middle, middle unit defender. Like I don't know. I think that the postseason kind of really got into people's brains, like rightfully so. Recency. That's the most recent thing we saw. It's definitely a weird look optically, but I don't know. I'm not going into this season expecting Justin Holl to be like some liability out there. Like he was a fine, average NHL defenseman last season.
Yeah, I think that he'll be just fine. I don't think he's going to be a traffic cone, a pylon cone, like people are saying that he will be. I know that he does struggle off the rush, but overall, his retrieval in the defensive zone, he's good at getting the puck out of the defensive zone. Like he's he's good in the defensive zone, and that's what the Red Wings need right now. You can see it again on here, like his WAR percentile at even strength defense in 2022 took a huge leap, and it did so in 2021 over 2020. Like he defensively continues to get better. Just if that offensive side of the puck gets better, like he'll rebound right back to being considered a decent defenseman. I get so like we all kind of do this sometimes, like we look at Sherratt last year, and he became the scapegoat of the Red Wings. But I don't think Justin Holl is this year's Ben Sherratt. Contracts are really similar, I guess. But I think that's maybe where it ends, because I think Justin Holl's a better defenseman than Ben Sherratt.
Right, he's better. So like, yeah, I don't really care about that. But like we did this when we signed Holl, and like we went and we pulled up this, and then we pulled up Sherratt's. Like when we signed Ben Sherratt, his most recent season, he was like what was it, second percentile projected WAR? Like he was at the bottom. Like this dude's literally his projected WAR last year was better than half the league. Like this is a fine middle of the road defenseman. Like Ben Sherratt was not coming off a 50% projected WAR season. It was like a 4 or something, or 7 or what. It was a single digit number, I remember for sure. So you know what like it's not, I don't know. I thought that was a huge overreaction, and like I'll gladly admit defeat and say that I was wrong about it if he goes out there and like he just looks like he did in the postseason for the rest of his Red Wings career. Like obviously that's a huge problem, but we have seen nothing in the regular season over the last several years to lead us to believe that we should be carrying the weight of 8 games in the postseason over all of the analytics and just watching him that he's done as a second line defenseman for the last several years for Toronto.
And like, I know it sounds like we're really going to bat and defending Justin Holl, and I don't want it to make it seem like
I've been calling him average.
Yes.
I've literally been calling him middle. I've used the phrase middle of the road like 8 times. Like
you know what that means though on the internet, Scotty.
Right. No one's saying this dude's going to make the All-Star game. Like, but he's going to be a second or third pair guy. And as long as he's like fine, that he's going to be worth the addition. He's a right shot. Like they needed just fine stability on the right side, and they got it.
And is he overpaid? Yeah, absolutely. But it was a weak
Probably.
free agent market, and he also does make your defensive core better because is he better than Jordan Osterley or Robert Haig? Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And it was a huge
So,
team need, and
yeah,
that's why you bite the bullet when you have cap space and pay a little bit more for a huge team need.
and I mean, over like Justin Holl played the second most minutes total, not per game, but total than anyone else on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Only second to Mitch Marner, according to Natural Stat Trick. So like they made him a scapegoat, but he was also playing the most minutes almost outside of Mitch Marner than anybody else on the Toronto Maple Leafs. So it's like there's something to be said about a guy who can go out there and give you that kind of time. Like, yeah, it's probably because he was a little bit overexposed and playing more minutes than he should have, that he struggled so much.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see. I want to see if I can get the time on the ice per game too, to see where he was at. Probably a little bit lower. I don't know. Time on ice games played. That's not per 60 though. So he was fifth on the team when you factor in by games played, because he played 80 games, which of course will affect total time on the ice. But fifth on the team in time on the ice per games played, which still, behind Morgan Riley, Mitch Marner, TJ Brody. So behind two other defensemen who played significantly less amount of time on the ice.
Right.
So Justin Holl had to step up into roles that he shouldn't have because of injuries to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Anyways, again, I feel like I'm defending him more than basically when it comes to player preview with Justin Holl. Here's what it comes down to. He is going to be an average middle pair defenseman who will make your defensive core better. He'll probably get beat off the rush on occasion, which is going to frustrate Red Wings fans, but inside the defensive zone, he's going to be able to retrieve the puck and get the puck out of the zone. He makes the team better. And in terms of like point production, what did he even have last year? Like 18 points? Yeah, 18 points, 2 goals, 16 assists. He's not an offensive defenseman whatsoever. So if you can get 18 points out of him again, great season.
Yeah, I don't even care about the points.
Yeah.
He could have 5 for all I care. That's not why we brought him in.
So, yeah, I mean, that's your player preview for these first 3 players. As August goes on, we'll mix these in with the crossovers and other types of previews for the 2024 season. Scotty, got any final thoughts?
We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode on Wednesday. So stay tuned. Same time, same place. See your team every day.
Every day.